The message came on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Captain Elena Vasquez remembered that detail because Tuesdays had always been her favorite day of the week. Her father used to make pancakes every Tuesday when she was a child. But that Tuesday, 400 years ago, changed everything for humanity. The holographic display flickered in the command center of the orbital station above. Earth representatives from every human colony watched as the Galactic Council delivered their final transmission. The council chamber looked grand, filled with species from across the stars. The Thelians with their crystalline skin, the massive Barothians who barely fit in their seats, and the elegant Kryn with their flowing robes. Grand Arbiter Quellis stood at the center podium. His three eyes blinked in sequence as he read from the document before him. The translation software converted his clicking language into words every human could understand. The Voidborn threat has exceeded all projections, Quellis announced. His voice carried the weight of exhaustion. We must evacuate all essential species to the core worlds behind the barrier wall. The outer territories will be surrendered. This is not a decision we make lightly. Ambassador Chen, humanity's representative on the council, stood up from his seat. His voice shook with barely controlled anger. And what about humanity? What about Earth and our colonies? The chamber fell silent. Quellis looked down at his notes, refusing to meet Chen's eyes. Another council member, a Thelian named Veshitar, spoke instead. Her crystalline body chimed softly as she moved. Humanity is not on the evacuation list. Your species is too dispersed, too numerous, and frankly, too primitive to transport efficiently. The resources required would doom other species. You're leaving us to die, Chen said flatly. Your sacrifice will be remembered, Quellis replied. It sounded like a rehearsed line. The council thanks humanity for its understanding. The transmission ended. Just like that, humanity was alone. Elena had been 23 years old, fresh out of the Naval Academy. She watched the recording with her fellow cadets, all of them too shocked to speak. In the days that followed, the galaxy moved quickly. The great ships of the Council races departed from human space. Trade stopped. Communications ceased. Within 3 months, the barrier wall activated, a massive energy field that sealed off half the galaxy. Humanity was on the wrong side. The first decade was chaos. Some colonies panicked and tore themselves apart. Pirates raided supply lines. Earth's government struggled to maintain order across the scattered human worlds. But slowly, painfully, humanity adapted. They had no other choice. Elena rose through the ranks during those dark years. She learned to command ships with crews that knew they were fighting for survival, not glory. Every battle against pirates or raiders was personal. Every colony saved meant humanity lived another day. Now, 4 centuries later, Elena stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet. She was no longer the frightened cadet watching her species get abandoned. At 48 years old, with gray streaking through her black hair, she had become one of humanity's most respected commanders. The Indomitable was a testament to human ingenuity. When the galaxy left them behind, humans couldn't rely on Council technology anymore. They had to innovate. The ship's hull used adaptive alloys that shifted density based on threat detection. Its weapons were kinetic railguns and missile systems, not the energy weapons the Council favored. Its engines used quantum fold technology, something humans developed out of desperation when fuel became scarce. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Mars Command, her communications officer reported. Lieutenant Hayes was young but good at his job. Admiral Chen wants a full fleet report. Elena smiled slightly at the name. Admiral Marcus Chen was the grandson of the ambassador who had watched humanity get abandoned. The family name carried weight in human space. Marcus had dedicated his life to ensuring humanity never became vulnerable again. Tell the Admiral we're running Patrol Pattern Delta around the Saturn colonies, Elena replied. All systems nominal. No unusual activity. Life had become routine in some ways. Humanity controlled a modest chunk of space, about 40 systems with stable colonies. Earth remained the heart of it all, but Mars had become the military center. Venus housed the industrial complexes. The outer colonies pushed the boundaries, always searching for resources and new worlds. Humanity had survived. More than that, they had grown. The population numbered in the billions now, spread across fortified worlds. They had art, culture, and music. Children grew up hearing stories about the abandonment, Learning it as history, some families kept old recordings of the Council's final message, passing them down through generations as a reminder. Never trust others to save you. Save yourself. Elena walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond the barrier wall, the galaxy continued without humanity. She wondered sometimes if the Council had defeated the Voidborn. She wondered if they ever thought about the humans they left behind. Probably not. 400 years was a long time. They had likely forgotten Earth even existed. Captain, we're getting unusual readings from the outer sensor network. Hayes called out, pulling Elena from her thoughts. Something just came through the barrier wall. Elena's heart rate spiked. In 4 centuries, nothing had come through that wall. It was supposed to be impenetrable, a one-way seal that kept the Voidborn contained. Classification? Working on it now. The sensor officer, Lieutenant Park, hunched over her console. It's small, maybe frigate-sized. The design doesn't match anything in our database. Wait, I'm picking up energy signatures. They match old Council vessel patterns. The bridge went quiet. Every officer turned to look at Elena. She felt the weight of their stares. This moment was significant. She could feel it in her bones. After 400 years of silence, the galaxy was reaching out. Could be a trap, her first officer, Commander Okonkwo, said carefully. The big man had served with Elena for 15 years. She trusted his instincts. The Voidborn could have captured a Council ship. Or it could be survivors, Elena countered. Either way, we need to investigate. Hayes, send a message to Mars Command. Inform Admiral Chen we have a potential Council vessel entering human space. Then broadcast on all frequencies toward that ship. Tell them to power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. The Indomitable changed course, its powerful engines pushing the massive ship toward the unknown vessel. As they approached, the details became clearer. It was definitely a Council ship, specifically a Thelian design, but it looked damaged, scorched by weapons fire and barely holding together. They're responding to our hail, Hayes reported. Audio only. Putting it through now. Static filled the bridge, then a voice speaking in Thelian. The translation software kicked in, converting the musical tones into human language. This is Archivist Shalveth of the Galactic Council. Please, we need help. The core worlds are falling. The Voidborn have broken through our defenses. We sent this ship to find humans, if any still exist. We need you. The galaxy needs you. Elena felt dozens of emotions crash through her at once. Anger at the abandonment. Vindication that humanity had survived. Curiosity about what had happened beyond the wall. And underneath it all, a bitter satisfaction that the Council, which had left them to die, now came begging for help. She took a deep breath and made her decision. Bring them in. Secure their ship in our hangar bay. Prepare a medical team and security detail. And Hayes, start recording everything. The Council is about to learn that humanity doesn't forget. The Indomitable moved forward to collect the damaged ship, and with it, 4 centuries of silence came to an end. Shalveth had never imagined her life would end like this. As an archivist for the Galactic Council, she spent her days buried in historical records, not fleeing across space in a dying ship. But the galaxy had changed dramatically in the past few months, and survival meant adapting quickly. She sat in the damaged vessel's cockpit, her crystalline hands shaking as the human ship pulled them into its hangar bay. Through the viewport, she could see armed humans waiting in formation. They looked exactly like the old records showed, bipedal, soft-skinned, with their strange body hair and varied colors. But their equipment looked nothing like what she remembered from 4 centuries ago. Their weapons were sleek and dangerous. Their armor incorporated technology she didn't recognize. The docking procedure completed. Shalveth took a deep breath, her crystalline lungs chiming softly, and opened the hatch. The air in the human ship smelled different, slightly metallic. A woman in a dark blue uniform approached, flanked by guards. She had short black hair with gray streaks and eyes that missed nothing. I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Indomitable, the woman said. Her voice was calm but firm. Your archivist, Shalveth? Yes, Shalveth replied, grateful that the translation implant still worked. Thank you for not shooting us on sight. I wasn't certain you would help. I'm not certain we will, Vasquez said bluntly. But first medical team will check you over, then we talk. You'll be under guard until I'm satisfied you're not a threat. The humans were efficient. Within an hour, Shalveth found herself in a clean room, her minor injuries treated, sitting across a table from Captain Vasquez. A recording device sat between them, its red light blinking steadily. "Tell me everything," Vasquez said. "Start with the Voidborn." Shalveth began to speak. The words came easier than she expected, perhaps because she had nothing left to lose. She told Vasquez about the past 400 years, about how the Council had built the barrier wall to hold back the Voidborn threat. At first it seemed to work. The mysterious entities from dark space were contained in the outer territories. "We thought we had won," Shalveth explained, her body dimming with shame. "The Council believed the barrier would hold forever. They built new cities, expanded their fleets, and grew comfortable. The species that were evacuated to the core worlds thrived. Life was good. What about the species you left behind?" Vasquez asked quietly. "Did anyone think about them?" Shalveth looked down at her crystalline hands. "At first, yes. Grand Arbiter Quellis, the one who gave the evacuation order, kept a memorial. But as decades passed, then centuries, the abandoned species became history. Most council members born after the barrier went up never even knew you existed. Your records were archived deep in the system. I only found them by accident 3 months ago when I was researching pre-barrier trade routes." "Lucky for you," Vasquez said, though her tone suggested it wasn't a compliment. "The Voidborn evolved," Shalveth continued, eager to move past the topic of humanity's abandonment. "They learned. They adapted. 50 years ago they started testing the barrier, probing for weaknesses. 20 years ago they broke through in small numbers. We fought them off, but each battle was harder than the last." She pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device, showing the Council fleets in formation. The Kryn Armada was the pride of the galaxy, 10,000 ships strong. The Thelian mine ships could coordinate attacks across entire star systems. The Barothian dreadnoughts were mobile fortresses. "We thought we were invincible." The hologram shifted, showing battle footage. Vasquez leaned forward, watching intently. The Voidborn appeared as tears in reality itself, dark shapes that bent space around them. When they attacked, they didn't use weapons in the traditional sense. They simply unmade things, breaking down matter and energy and consuming it. "Energy weapons feed them," Shalveth said quietly. "Every plasma bolt, every laser, every quantum torpedo makes them stronger. The Council fleets were built around energy weapons. We were fighting with tactics that helped our enemy." "Idiots," Vasquez muttered, then looked up. "Sorry, continue." 6 months ago, the barrier wall failed catastrophically. Thousands of Voidborn poured through. The Council threw everything at them. The battles were... Shalveth's voice cracked. Her body flickered with grief. Commander Vorjan of the Kryn military led the defense. He was brilliant, aggressive, and brave. He destroyed his own fleet trying to stop them. She showed more footage. Entire planets going dark as the Voidborn swept through, refugee ships fleeing in all directions. Council chambers in chaos as representatives argued while their worlds burned. "How many dead?" Vasquez asked. "Trillions," Shalveth whispered. The Barothian homeworld fell first. Then the Thelian colonies. The Kryn fought to the last ship. Now the core worlds themselves are under siege. We have weeks, maybe days, before complete collapse. Vasquez sat back in her chair, processing the information. Shalveth watched the human's face carefully. Humans were supposed to be emotional, easy to read, but the captain's expression revealed nothing. "Grand Arbiter Quellis is still alive," Shalveth added. "He's ancient now, over 600 years old. When the situation became desperate, I brought him the records about humanity. I told him you might still exist beyond the barrier." "What did he say?" he cried, Shalveth said simply. "He said abandoning your species was the greatest mistake of his life. He authorized this mission personally. He gave me this ship and told me to find you if I could and beg for your help." "Beg," Vasquez repeated. Interesting word choice. Shalveth met the human's eyes. "Captain Vasquez, the Council was wrong. We were arrogant and blind. We left sentient beings to die because it was convenient. I understand if you want revenge. I understand if you want to watch us fall. But I'm not asking for the Council. I'm asking for the innocent people, the children, the civilians who had nothing to do with the abandonment. They don't deserve to be erased from existence." Vasquez stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth hung in the distance, blue and green and beautiful. Shalveth had seen images of it in the archives, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. This was the homeworld of a species the galaxy had thrown away, and yet it still thrived. "You know what's funny?" Vasquez said finally. "We survived because you abandoned us. We had to innovate, to push ourselves beyond what we thought possible. If you had taken us with you, We would have stayed dependent on Council technology. We would have been just another species in your collection. Then you've become strong, Shalaveth said hopefully. Strong enough to help? Maybe. Vasquez turned back to face her. But that's not my decision alone. The Admiral and Earth's government will decide how humanity responds. What I can tell you is this. We're not the species you left behind. We don't forget and we don't forgive easily, but we also don't abandon people to die just because it's inconvenient. She pressed a button on her console. Commander Okonkwo, set course for Mars, best speed, and send a priority message to Admiral Chen. Tell him we're bringing a guest who has quite a story to tell. Shalaveth felt a wave of relief wash through her crystalline body. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was hope, and hope was more than the galaxy had right now. As the Indomitable turned toward Mars, Shalaveth looked out at the human ship's interior. Crew members moved with purpose, their technology humming efficiently. These humans had built an entire civilization while the galaxy forgot they existed. She wondered what Grand Arbiter Quellis would say when he learned humanity not only survived, but thrived. She wondered if the Council would accept help from the species they had condemned. Most of all, she wondered if humanity would be enough to turn the tide. The Voidborn were coming, and the galaxy was running out of time. The Council chamber on Mars was built into the side of Olympus Mons, the largest mountain in the solar system. Red rock surrounded the reinforced windows, and Earth hung visible in the sky above. Representatives from every major human colony sat in the circular room, their faces grim as they watched Shalaveth's testimony play on the central holographic display. Admiral Marcus Chen stood at his position, arms crossed over his chest. At 62 years old, he carried himself like a man ready for war. His grandfather's face looked down from a memorial wall, frozen in the moment he learned humanity had been abandoned. Marcus had grown up with that image, a constant reminder of the galaxy's betrayal. She's telling the truth, Captain Vasquez said from her seat. Our sensors confirm massive energy disturbances beyond the barrier wall. The readings match her descriptions of Voidborn activity. Whatever is happening out there, it's catastrophic. Governor Okafor of the Venus Industrial Complex leaned forward. She was a broad-shouldered woman with scars from her years working in the mining facilities. Why should we care? They left us to die. Trillions of them, she said. Well, billions of us were supposed to die 400 years ago. We didn't. But only because we fought for every day of survival. Agreed, said Representative Torres from the outer colonies. My great-great-grandmother died when the Council abandoned the mining station at Kepler 442. No evacuation, no warning, just silence. Why do we owe them anything? Ambassador Liu, Earth's diplomatic representative, spoke up. She was young for her position, only 35, but she had a reputation for fairness. Because we're better than they were. If we let innocent people die when we could help, we become what we hate about them. Pretty words, Governor Okafor shot back. But words don't protect our people. Every ship we send beyond the barrier is a ship that can't defend our colonies. What if this is a trap? What if the Voidborn learned to mimic Council species? Admiral Chen finally spoke, his voice cutting through the argument. I had Shalaveth examined by our best doctors and scientists. She's genuine, not a mimic or a trick. The Voidborn are real and they're winning. The question isn't whether the threat exists. The question is whether we respond. And if we do respond, Colonel Mbeke from Mars Defense added, what are we responding with? Our fleet is strong, but it's designed to defend human space, not fight in a galactic war. We don't know anything about these Voidborn except what one terrified archivist told us. Vasquez stood up. Then let me tell you what I know. I've reviewed all the data Shalaveth brought with her. The Voidborn consume energy. Council weapons are all energy-based, plasma, lasers, particle beams. They've been feeding their enemy for months. Our weapons are different. We use kinetic railguns, explosive missiles, good old-fashioned bullets and bombs. We developed them because we couldn't maintain energy weapon systems without Council support. She brought up a tactical display, showing human weapon systems. Our technology might be exactly what they need. Not because we're special, but because we were abandoned and had to adapt. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. She's right. Our quantum fold drives are faster than the old Council engines. Our adaptive AI systems are more sophisticated than anything in Shalaveth's database. 400 years of isolation forced us to innovate or die. We chose to innovate, but is that enough? Governor Okafor pressed. Even if our weapons work better against these things, we're talking about a galaxy-wide war. How many ships do we send? How many human lives are we willing to risk for people who wouldn't risk anything for us? The chamber fell silent. It was the core question, the one everyone was thinking, but few wanted to say aloud. Humanity had survived by being ruthlessly practical. Sentiment was a luxury they couldn't afford. Representative Chen Wei, a distant cousin of the admiral, cleared his throat. He represented the Saturn colonies, some of the most remote human settlements. My people survived by helping each other. When the food shipments stopped coming from Earth, we didn't abandon the outer stations. We figured out hydroponic systems. We shared resources. We stayed human. He stood up, his voice growing stronger. The council stopped being human, stopped being decent. They calculated who was worth saving and who wasn't. They made a cold, logical decision. Maybe it was even the right tactical decision in that moment. But it was wrong. It was fundamentally wrong. If we make the same choice now, what does that make us? Survivors, Governor Okafor said quietly. But her voice lacked conviction. Ambassador Liu activated her console, bringing up population data. Current human population across all colonies, 8.3 billion. We have a standing defense fleet of 2,000 ships. We can mobilize another 500 within a month. If we commit half our fleet to this operation, we risk weakening our own defenses. If we commit more, we risk everything. What does Shalveth propose? Colonel Mbeke asked. Vasquez answered. She says the Council's last stronghold is the Nexus Gate, a massive station guarding the approach to their core systems. If it falls, the Voidborn will sweep through unimpeded. She estimates they have 2 weeks before the defenses collapse. She wants us to reinforce the Nexus Gate to buy time for a counteroffensive. A counteroffensive with what? Okafor demanded. She said their fleets are destroyed. With us, Admiral Chen said simply. With human tactics, human weapons, and human stubbornness. It's a long shot. Maybe an impossible shot, but it's the only shot they have. He walked to the center of the chamber, looking at each representative in turn. I'm not going to lie to you. This is dangerous. We could lose ships. We could lose people. And the galaxy might not even appreciate it. But my grandfather sat in a council chamber and watched them condemn our species. He came home and dedicated his life to making sure we survived anyway. Not out of revenge, but because he believed humanity was worth saving. His voice grew quieter. Now we have to decide what we believe. Do we believe humanity is just about survival, or is it about something more? Do we become the species that abandons others, or do we become the species that shows up when nobody else will? The silence stretched long. Finally, Representative Torres spoke. If we do this, we do it as equals, not as pawns or subordinates. The Council doesn't get to order us around. Agreed, several voices echoed. Governor Okafor sighed. And we maintain a defensive fleet here. Half our ships stay to protect our people. Non-negotiable. Fair, Admiral Chen acknowledged. Ambassador Liu stood. Then I call for a vote. All in favor of sending a task force to aid the Galactic Council. Raise your hand. Hands went up slowly. Not everyone. Not even a majority at first. But one by one, more hands rose. When the count finished, it was 63 in favor, 37 against. Motion carries, Liu announced. Humanity will respond to the Council's request for aid. Admiral Chen activated his communicator. Captain Vasquez, prepare the Indomitable for immediate departure. You'll command the task force. Select your best ships and crews. I'm authorizing you to take 1,000 vessels through the barrier wall. Understood, Admiral, Vasquez replied. What should I tell Shalveth? Chen smiled grimly. Tell her humanity doesn't forget. Tell her we remember every colony they left to die, every call for help that went unanswered, every person who died waiting for rescue that never came. Tell her we remember all of it, he paused. And then tell her we're coming anyway. In her quarters aboard the Indomitable, Shalveth received the news. She had been waiting for hours, uncertain of her fate, when Vasquez appeared on her communication screen and delivered Admiral Chen's message. Shalveth's crystalline body flashed with colors that meant hope in her species' language. Thank you, she whispered. Why? Why would you help us after what we did? Vasquez looked at her for a long moment. Because someone has to give a damn about what's right. The Council didn't, but humanity will. We're going to show the galaxy what it means to not abandon people. She leaned forward, her expression hardening. But archivists, understand this. We're not doing this for the Council. We're doing this for the innocent people caught in this war. And when it's over, things are going to change. Humanity isn't going to be catalogued and dismissed ever again. I understand, Shalveth said. And I think that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Outside the window, human ships began to gather. The fleet that 4 centuries ago didn't exist was now preparing to save the galaxy that had forgotten them. History was about to witness something unprecedented, humanity's deliverance. The Nexus Gate Station hung in space like a dying star. It was massive, built by the Council over 100 years ago, designed to be an impregnable fortress. Now its shields flickered weakly, and sections of its hull had been torn open by void-born attacks. Around it, the remnants of the Council fleet fought desperately against the dark shapes that seemed to bend reality itself. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the battle through the view screen. 1,000 human ships had just emerged from Quantum Fold, arriving at the edge of the combat zone. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Voidborn were worse than the recordings had shown. They moved like wounds in space, dark tears that swallowed light. Where they passed, ships simply stopped existing. Energy weapons fired by the Council fleet seemed to make them stronger, the beams bending into the darkness and disappearing. Commander Okonkwo. Tactical assessment, Vasquez ordered. Her first officer worked his console quickly. Council forces number approximately 300 ships of various classes. They're arranged in a defensive sphere around the Nexus Gate. Enemy forces. That's harder to count. The Voidborn don't show up cleanly on our sensors. Estimate somewhere between 500 and 800 entities, ranging from fighter size to something that reads as big as a moon. They're losing, Lieutenant Park added quietly. The Nexus Gate's shields are at 12%. If those shields fall, the station falls. And if the station falls, there's nothing between the Voidborn and the core worlds. Vasquez straightened her uniform. 400 years ago, humanity had been abandoned at the Nexus Gate. Now they were here to save it. The irony wasn't lost on her. Open a channel to the Council fleet, she ordered. All frequencies. Let them know we're here. Hayes worked his board. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth ship Indomitable, commanding the human task force. We received your call for help. We're here to provide assistance, transmitting tactical data and coordination protocols now. How can we help? The response came after a long pause. The voice was tired, strained, speaking in Kryn. The translation software converted it immediately. This is Commander Vorjon of the Council Defense Fleet. You're really here, humans, after all this time. We thought. I don't even know what we thought. His voice cracked slightly. Captain Vasquez, we're dying out here. We've been fighting for 3 days straight. Our weapons don't work against them. Every shot we fire makes them stronger. We're down to ramming tactics, and even that barely slows them down. Commander, we need you to cease all energy weapon fire immediately, Vasquez said firmly. Our analysis shows you're feeding them. Switch to kinetic weapons only. Most of our ships don't have kinetic weapons, Vorjon replied. We phased them out centuries ago as primitive technology. Vasquez smiled without humor. Lucky for you, humans specialize in primitive technology. All ships battle formation Delta. Okonkwo, coordinate with the Council fleet. I want our ships providing cover fire while their ships fall back to recharge and rearm. Hayes, patch me through to Shalveth. The Thelian archivist appeared on a side screen. She had been working with human technicians, helping them understand Council ship systems. Captain? Shalveth, can the Council ships be retrofitted with our weapon systems? The crystalline woman thought for a moment. Possibly. It would take time we don't have. But they could manually load and fire our missiles from their cargo bays. It's crude, but it might work. Then make it happen. Coordinate with Commander Okonkwo. Vasquez turned back to the main screen. All ships weapons free. Show them how humans fight. The human fleet broke formation, splitting into attack groups. The Indomitable led the charge, its railguns spinning up to fire. Unlike the Council's energy weapons, the human railguns launched solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Tungsten rods the size of telephone poles crossed the space between the fleet and the Voidborn. The results were immediate and dramatic. Where energy weapons had been absorbed, the kinetic rounds punched through. The Voidborn entities shuddered and fractured. They didn't explode or burn, but they stopped moving. They stopped being. Target destroyed, Park reported, surprise in her voice. Captain, it actually worked. The kinetic weapons are effective. All ships focus fire, Vasquez ordered. Priority targets are the largest entities. Work your way down from there. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves coordinated by their adaptive AI systems. The AI analyzed voidborne movement patterns, predicting where they would appear next. Missiles with high explosive warheads streaked through space, and where they hit, the dark tiers sealed shut. On the council ships, crews watched in amazement. Commander Vorjon, a veteran of 100 battles, had never seen anything like it. "They're pushing them back," he said to his tactical officer. "The humans are actually pushing them back." His communications officer looked up. "Commander, the humans are sending us weapon packages. They want us to manually deploy missiles from our cargo bays." Vorjon laughed, a harsh sound that spoke of exhaustion and hope. "Then load them up. If throwing rocks at these things works, we'll throw every rock we have." The tide of battle began to shift. Council ships, coordinating with human vessels, started using the crude but effective tactic of manually launching human missiles. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The voidborne advance slowed, then stopped. But the victory was short-lived. The space itself seemed to tear open, and something enormous emerged. It dwarfed the largest voidborne entity they had seen so far. The sensors struggled to measure it, showing readings that made no sense. It was there and not there, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Mother of God," Okonkwo whispered. "Captain, that thing is reading as the size of a small moon. If it reaches the Nexus Gate, he didn't need to finish." Everyone on the bridge understood. That entity could consume the entire station in moments. Vasquez made her decision in seconds. "All ships concentrate fire on the big one. Everything we have now." The human fleet responded instantly. Every railgun, every missile, every weapon, they had opened fire simultaneously. The space between the fleet and the massive voidborne entity filled with projectiles. The impact was spectacular. Parts of the entity shredded away. But it kept coming. "It's not enough," Park reported. "Captain, it's absorbing the damage and regenerating." Vasquez looked at her crew. She had known this moment might come. The moment when someone would have to make the hard choice. She thought about her father and his Tuesday pancakes. She thought about humanity surviving 400 years alone. She thought about what it meant to be human. "Commander Okonkwo, transfer command to the destroyer Valiant," she said calmly. "Hayes, get me a direct line to Admiral Chen on Mars." "Captain, what are you doing?" Okonkwo demanded, but he already knew. They all knew. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Vasquez, report. Admiral, we're engaging a massive voidborne entity. Conventional weapons aren't enough. I'm requesting permission to execute Protocol Omega." Chen's face went pale. Protocol Omega was a last resort tactic. Ramming speed with the ship's quantum fold drive destabilized. It would create an explosion unlike anything else, a tear in spacetime itself. It would also vaporize the ship and everyone on it. "Elena," Chen said quietly, using her first name for the first time in years. "There has to be another way." "There isn't, sir. This thing reaches the Nexus Gate and billions die. The gate falls, the core worlds fall, and humanity's first real action in 400 years is a failure. I can't let that happen. None of us can." She looked around the bridge at her crew. "I'm ordering all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. But I'm staying with my ship." "This is my choice. Nobody moved." Okonkwo stepped forward. "We're staying, Captain, all of us. If you're doing this, we do it together." Vasquez felt tears threatening but pushed them back. "Hayes, send a message to the fleet. Tell them to fall back to a safe distance. Tell them humanity showed up." She turned to her helmsman. "Helm, set course for the center of that entity. Maximum speed. Destabilize the quantum fold drive on my mark." The Indomitable turned, its massive engines pushing it toward the voidborne mothership. Behind them, the human and council fleets pulled back. On every ship, crews watched in silence as the flagship accelerated. Shalveth, watching from the destroyer Valiant, felt her crystalline body dim with grief. "They're going to die," she whispered. "They came to save us, and now they're going to die." Commander Vorjon, transferred to coordinate with the human fleet, shook his head. "No, Archivist. They're going to win. Watch." The Indomitable reached ramming speed, accelerating to velocities that should have been impossible. At the last moment, Captain Vasquez pressed the final control. "For Earth," she said quietly. "For humanity." The quantum fold drive destabilized and the universe screamed. The explosion was visible across 3 star systems. Space itself tore open, a wound of pure energy that consumed everything near it. The massive voidborne entity didn't have time to react. It was there, and then it simply ceased to exist along with hundreds of smaller entities caught in the blast. When the sensors cleared, the Indomitable was gone, but so was the mothership. The escape pod tumbled through space, its occupants unconscious from the force of the explosion. Emergency systems kept them alive while the pod's beacon transmitted continuously, hoping someone would hear it. 3 hours after the Indomitable's sacrifice, a Thelian medical ship detected the signal. When they opened the pod, they found Captain Elena Vasquez and 15 members of her bridge crew, battered but breathing. Commander Okonkwo had locked the captain in her chair and activated the emergency evacuation system in the final seconds before impact, overriding her commands. "You can court-martial me later," he had said as the pod launched. She had wanted to protest, but the explosion had knocked her unconscious before she could argue. Now, 2 weeks after the Battle of Nexus Gate, Vasquez stood in the reconstructed council chamber on Sanctuary Station. Her right arm was in a healing brace and bruises still colored her face, but she was alive. Beside her stood Commander Okonkwo, Lieutenant Hayes and Lieutenant Park. Behind them, representatives from the Human Task Force stood at attention. The chamber was filled with species from across the galaxy. Thelians, Kryn, Barothians, and dozens of others she couldn't name. At the center podium stood Grand Arbiter Quellis. He looked ancient, his 3 eyes dimmed with age, his body stooped, but his voice was clear when he spoke. "Captain Vasquez," he began, and the entire chamber fell silent. "400 years ago I stood in a chamber much like this one and made the worst decision of my long life. I condemned humanity to die because it was convenient, because the calculation said your species wasn't worth the resources to save." He paused, his 3 eyes blinking slowly. "I have lived with that shame every day since. I kept a memorial to the species we abandoned. I told myself it was necessary, that the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. But it was a lie. It was cowardice wrapped in logic." Quellis descended from the podium, moving slowly across the chamber floor until he stood before Vasquez. Then, to the shock of everyone present, the Grand Arbiter knelt. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, past and present, I apologize. We wronged your species in a way that cannot be forgiven, and yet you came when we called. You saved us when you had every reason to let us die. You lost ships and people defending a galaxy that forgot you existed." He looked up at Vasquez. "The Indomitable sacrificed itself to save the Nexus Gate. We thought you were aboard. We were prepared to honor your memory. Instead, you're here, and I don't know whether to be grateful you survived or ashamed that you're seeing us grovel." Vasquez looked down at the ancient being. She felt anger, yes. 400 years of abandonment couldn't be erased with an apology, but she also felt something else, something that surprised her. Pity. This old creature had lived with his mistake for centuries, watching it haunt him. "Stand up," she said quietly. "You're the Grand Arbiter. Act like it." Quellis rose slowly. "What happens now, Captain? What does humanity want?" "We want what everyone wants," Vasquez replied, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Safety, respect, a place in the galaxy where we're not dismissed or catalogued or forgotten. We want to be equals, not subordinates." Admiral Chen, who had arrived from Mars 3 days ago, stepped forward. "The Council is dissolved as of today. It failed in its primary mission, to protect all species under its jurisdiction. In its place, we propose the Galactic Alliance. Every species gets representation. Every voice gets heard. Decisions are made collectively, not by a handful of elder races." Representative Torres added, "And humanity will be a founding member, not as a junior partner, not as a probationary member, as an equal." Murmurs spread through the chamber. A Barothian delegate, massive and scarred from recent battles, stood up. "The humans earned their place. They saved us when our own weapons failed. They taught us that newer isn't always better, that adapting is more important than tradition." Commander Vorjan, still recovering from his own injuries, spoke next. "I fought alongside human commanders. Their tactical systems are superior to ours. Their willingness to sacrifice for others humbles me. The Kryn people support this proposal." One by one, delegates stood and voiced their support. Not everyone was happy. Some species had prospered under the old council system and resented the change, but the majority understood that the old ways had failed. Humanity had proven there was a better path forward. Shalaveth, sitting in a special section reserved for archivists and historians, recorded everything. She had already begun writing a comprehensive history titled The Great Mistake and the Deliverance. It would be required reading in schools across the galaxy, ensuring future generations never forgot what happened when species were valued by convenience rather than principle. The vote passed with an overwhelming majority. The Galactic Alliance was born. Humanity took its place as a founding member. For the first time in 400 years, human ships could travel freely beyond the barrier wall. Human colonies could trade with alien worlds. Human children would grow up knowing they were part of something larger than their isolated corner of space. But the work was far from over. The Voidborn had retreated, not disappeared. The Battle of Nexus Gate had broken their momentum, but they still lurked in the dark spaces between stars. The war would continue, but now it would be fought with human tactics, human weapons, and human determination. 3 months after the battle, Admiral Chen stood on Mars looking at the memorial being constructed. It was massive, built into the side of Olympus Mons. One wall listed every human who had died during the 400 years of isolation. Colonists who starved when supply ships never came. Soldiers who fought pirates without reinforcements. Children who died from diseases the Council could have cured. The other wall, still being carved, would list the names of those who died at Nexus Gate. The Indomitable's crew who didn't make it to the escape pods. The pilots who flew their fighters into void-born entities. The engineers who stayed at their post until the end. "It's a good memorial," a voice said behind him. Chen turned to see Captain Vasquez approaching. She still limped slightly, her injuries healing slowly. "You should be resting," Chen said. "I've rested enough. Besides, the new ships are almost ready. The Alliance wants me to command the first joint task force, human and alien crews working together. Will you take it?" Vasquez looked at the memorial, at all those names carved in stone. "Yeah. Someone needs to make sure this all means something. We didn't survive 400 years alone just to repeat the Council's mistakes." She turned to face Chen. "What about you, Admiral?" "What's next?" "Training," Chen replied. "Every Council species wants to learn human tactics. I'm organizing a military academy here on Mars. We'll teach them how to fight like humans, how to adapt, how to never give up." "Good." Vasquez smiled. The galaxy could use more of that. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set over the Martian landscape. Somewhere beyond the barrier wall, the Voidborn waited. Somewhere in the core world, species that had been enemies for generations were learning to work together. And somewhere on Earth, children played in parks, unaware that their species had just changed the course of galactic history. Shalveth arrived a week later, traveling to Earth for the first time. She wanted to see the home world of the species that saved the galaxy. When she stepped off the transport in New Geneva, she was overwhelmed by the colors, the sounds, the sheer vitality of human civilization. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, approached her nervously. "Are you really from space?" "Like from another species?" Shalveth knelt down, her crystalline body chiming softly. "Yes, I'm from a planet called Thel, very far from here." "Cool," the girl said. "My teacher said your people needed help and humans helped you. Is that true?" "Very true," Shalveth replied. "Your people saved mine when we didn't deserve it." The girl thought about this seriously. "My mom says we should help people when they need it, even if they were mean before. Because that's what makes us human." Shalveth felt her body shimmer with emotion. "Your mother is very wise. Can you tell me your name?" "Elena," the girl said proudly. "I'm named after Captain Vasquez. She's my hero." After the girl ran off to join her friends, Shalveth stood there, watching human children play with alien visitors like it was the most natural thing in the world. This was what the Council had dismissed as not worth saving. This vibrant, resilient, endlessly adaptable species. She activated her recording device and began a new entry. 400 years ago, the galaxy made a choice. We chose survival over compassion, pragmatism over principle. We thought we were making a hard but necessary decision. We were wrong. Today I stand on Earth and I see what we almost destroyed. Not just a species, but an idea. The idea that every life has value. That abandonment is never acceptable. That showing up matters. She looked up at the sky where the barrier wall once stood. It had been permanently deactivated, no longer needed. Humanity was supposed to die alone and forgotten. Instead, they survived and thrived. They built a civilization on the principle that we should have followed. Never abandon anyone. Shalveth paused, choosing her next words carefully. The humans have a saying, "We're all we've got." For 400 years, that was literally true for them. They were all they had, and it was enough. Now, thanks to their choice to help us despite everything, we all have each other.